If you had 30 minutes to hide from a nuclear blast, where would you go? I'd always heard a basement at the library is good, because books may absorb some radiation. Make sure you don't break your glasses. There was time now. It's just not fair. Laughing my butt off, this is perfect. Well, at least I have my books. I work at a nuclear pharmacy which has dosimeters, Geiger counters, potassium iodide tablets, radiac spray, PPE and lead, and the break room office is an extra vault that was made to house the particle accelerator known as a cyclotron. I'm at work right now, so, assuming I'm safe from the initial blast radius, I'd probably go sit at my desk, scroll through Reddit and watch the world end. Cool. What's radiac spray? Think like right away from Fallout. The Eisenhower Tunnel on I-70 in Colorado, 1.7 miles long, unless it turns into Stephen King's The Stand. I'm in Colorado, so good to know. I just figured I'd go towards mountains, I guess. Sort of planless in this situation though. Going into the mountains is a great idea. There are a ton of USAF strategic assets in Colorado that would be prime targets for an enemy nuclear strike. A lot of our space capabilities are based there, as well as some nuclear assets, all of which I would expect to get hit. And none of them are really deep in the Rockies or anything. If you're within a mile or so of a strike, regardless of whether you're underground or not, you're ducked. So just going underground wouldn't cut it. Mountains provide a great shield to blast waves, though, and it's extremely hard to hit the valleys between them. You're basically in a global scale trench. I would probably go to the bank and ask to go to where I stored valuables. Rob's bank put me and all the money in the vault, then shut the door. I'm seeing a flaw in this plan. Well, according to this film by the National Cleanup, Paint Up, Fix Up Bureau link, my best bet is to wait inside a house that has been coated with a fresh coat of good American paint and varnish. Reminds me of The Simpsons when nuclear war occurs and Homer was in a bomb shelter, and then Marge says all the layers of lead paint made the perfect bomb shelter. There is an old building near me that has a basement. I know what boards to move to get into the basement from the outside. It's the only building I know of within about 100 miles that is entirely reinforced brick masonry with a basement. And I'm sure I'd spend the apocalyptic event chatting with several homeless people who also know about the board. We'd all survive though. Right answer. This is how my mom's friend's son survived Hiroshima. He was taking a break in the basement when the bomb hit. His co-worker classmate who was still outside was severely burned and later died. I saw some old civil defense stuff from the 50s that suggested doing the same thing. Edit fixed details. People survived less than 4 miles from Air Zero at Hiroshima just by being inside concrete structures, like the Bank of Japan building. The simple earthen shelters that dotted the city would have been adequate to save many lives had the population not been desensitized to air raid warnings. How long did they have to stay inside? I have a bathroom in the basement with no windows where we could hide for a while. Hide. I ain't getting drafted for WW3. This bomb gonna send me. There would be no draft. World War III would be over in about 30 minutes. There's a building at the college I work at that goes 80 feet underground and has 6-foot thick inward sloping concrete walls. I'll be in there. I'd try to do that guy jacking off from Pompey thing. I feel like someone should play that forward so everyone can see the X-rayed imprint of your jacking on the wall for centuries and become the cause of speculation that people that lived during the apocalypse had tiny penises. No thanks. I would find the nearest elementary school and hide under one of the desks. Anyway, that's what we were taught when I was in elementary school. Subway system, sewer system. Underground basically. Edit, thanks for my most upvoted comment ever. You all make great points. I think it's really situational. Depends on blast radius, distance, etc. Overall, not an easy thing to survive. Metro 2033 intensifies. Artem, it's good to see you. Here's 3 bullets and a gas mask. That should be everything you could possibly need. Oh, and don't forget to collect filters everywhere you go, or suffer. Man, I love the Metro series. Pretty easy. I would just go to my nearest bomb shelter. They are all over the place here in Finland, and can house up to 4 million people, so more than enough room for the entire urban population. Every metro station also doubles as a bomb shelter, and I can walk to one of those within 10 minutes, so I would probably chill there. There are probably a bunch of shelters even closer to me though, but could be busy. You can actually walk across a lot of Helsinki center completely underground. I often do, when it is raining. The underground network of tunnels is huge, and all bomb-proof. Finland actually has one of the most thorough civil defense programs in the world. For example, in new development projects, property owners must include a civil defense shelter in buildings of at least 1200 m2. Link. Finland got everything covered. Damn. Might have something to do with being a Western aligned neighbor of the Soviet Union during that whole Cold War thing. Finland wasn't Western aligned. They walked the very fine line between both sides, and had to make various concessions to the Soviet Union in order to remain as independent as possible under the circumstances. As a result, political science now has a concept called Finlandization, which describes similar relationship between neighboring countries. Oh god, did I miss something in the news today? No, not that I know of, just was playing Fallout and thought of that, haha. My man. The lady that used to do my taxes told me that her daughter and family were in Hawaii when the false alarm went out. They got into bed with their small children and watched kids movies, waiting to die, but keeping the kids unaware and happy. This went on for some time. Link. I still get chills when I look at that screenshot. I still go into immediate panic mode every time I get an Amber Alert or any kind of emergency alert on my phone. I just remember waking up to that sound and looking at that horrifying message, not really registering it at first. I called my husband after staring at it for what felt like an eternity. Apparently I called him just as everyone else started acting weird, and moments later he told me people were running out to their cars. Some couples were holding hands. We lived in a military installation, so my thoughts immediately went to the worst case scenario, that we might take a direct hit. But he tried his best to calm me down by telling me there was no indication that it was necessarily a nuke heading our way, and that the military has missile defense systems in place to intercept an attack. He told me not to freak out when I hear the sirens, set a timer for 10 minutes, grab the basic necessities, and be inside the coat closet with our 1-year-old before that 10 minutes was up. The entire time I just remember feeling numb, detached. The whole thing just felt so surreal. I don't know how I would have handled the situation if it weren't for my husband calmly giving me step-by-step instructions on what to do. He told me he would try his best to make it home in time, but that it wasn't likely. Traffic was at a standstill where he was. People were getting out of their cars and just running. He then asked me if I wanted to call my parents, but I told him I didn't want to get off the phone with him. It was at that moment that it all really started sinking in, and I finally looked at my daughter, who surprisingly wasn't being her usual fussy self in the mornings, and it felt like my soul just shattered. Everything was in slow motion. I remember every facial expression. The pink Minnie Mouse pajamas she was wearing, that I bought the day before. Her favorite stuffed bunny she clung to, the flowery blanket I took from her crib. I just sat there and tried to take in as many seconds as I could, wishing that time wasn't a thing, that none of this was a thing. Edit. Thank you to everyone who took the time to read my little late night monologue. Totally didn't realize how long it was until I hit send. This was the first time I really put that experience into words, and I think I needed it. I truly appreciate all the support. To bed for a 30-minute nap. Jack off and nap. Might as well make it a personal day. Like when everyone in Hawaii thought they were going to get hit by ballistic missiles. Edit easily the most upvotes I've ever had. Thank you. Made my morning. There's a fallout shelter in a bank about a mile down from where I live that was built back in the 60s. I'd probably yoink some snacks and a bottle of Jack from the kitchen and sprint down there, then hunker down for a few days. If it's locked, then, well, I can polish off the Jack and wait for the fireworks. I'd probably climb up onto my roof with a lawn chair and a cold beer and watch everything go to shit. Can't watch once you're blinded by the initial blast. I'll bring sunglasses. You got me there. To the liquor store, so I could hide from my problems the way I always do. I would go buy all the frozen pizzas I could carry and head to the flavor zone. There is an old library built in the 1960s less than a mile from my house with a basement fallout shelter. I know because I always see the old 1960s fallout shelter signs and consider stealing one. But the potential of getting caught and being banned from the library for the rest of my life stops me every time. Under the blankets. Nothing can get you under there. Nothing. Including the air that I need to breathe after 5 minutes. Source was once a child. This actually happened to me. Sort of. My wife and I were in Hawaii, near Pearl Harbor, in 2018 when the ballistic missile alert showed up on my phone. Seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill, it said. For a minute I thought it was fake. But why take the chance? I'd lived in Hawaii before and decided to get as far away from Pearl Harbor as I could before mass panic set in. I drove east towards Kaniar. There's a tunnel through a mountain and I stopped in the middle. We were the second car to stop, and within a few minutes the entire tunnel was full. After about 30 more minutes a friend of mine in Kaniar texted that it had been mistake. He'd had his wife lie down in the bathtub while he watched the TV for updates. It was a pretty frightening experience. Edit wow. This comment blew up head. To address the comments about the use of the tunnel. I have no idea whether that was a good spot or not. I'd read before that nuclear missiles are typically detonated thousands of feet in the air. So the blast wave comes downward then spreads out. I'm no expert though. Just something I thought at the time. So I thought it might just travel down the mountainside and maybe we'd be trapped in there by debris blocking the tunnel. But at least it offered a possible bit of protection. Having very little time to do anything, it at least made us feel better that we were taking action. I was about 90% sure it was a false alarm. But that remaining 10% did a number. I've read accounts of survivors of Hiroshima. Do yourself a favor. Don't look it up. And I was hoping for either an all clear report or a flash of light and nothing more. Yes. I remember this day also. I was about to head to the beach with some friends for a barbecue, and I was telling my parents goodbye and that I loved them. Right before we stepped out of the door, everything went silent as all of our phones simultaneously went off with the warning. It was terrifying. My father is ex-military and he just sat down. My mother, who has terrible anxiety, sat next to him. They said nothing. My friends and I shared a glance at each other, sat down, and they each called their family to say goodbye. It was surreal. After everything got confirmed as a false alarm, we still went to the beach. Most surreal experience I've ever had. Sounds so horrible. That whole thing was so crazy. A grocery store. Eat everything you can before you die. Ed, go outside and wait to die. I'm not gonna deal with that shit. I'm not within death radius of any place that could plausibly be nuked. Even if someone decided to go abso-ducking-lutely nuts on us in Australia and sent 10 nukes at Melbourne, I can't see them hitting Frankston, Cranbourne and Mornington. The 3 closest semi-plausible targets. I'd shelter in place. I live about 15 minutes away from one of the largest Air Force bases in my entire country. If my country went to nuclear war, my house would definitely be destroyed. I'm going to dig the deepest trench possible in 30 million. I think I'd find a chain link fence near a playground. Might as well go out the way I lived, embracing my knowledge of useless pop culture references, like it's a talent. Edit SP. The afterlife. The nuclear blast won't be able to kill me if I kill myself first. I wonder how many people killed themselves as a result of the Hawaii incident in 2018. None that I could find. But one guy had a heart attack. I'd go have a pint at the Winchester and wait for the whole thing to blow over. If I knew it was coming, I'd just drive away. Distance makes all the difference with nuclear blasts. I'm close to mountains in the outer suburbs of a big city. I'd drive in that mountain direction as we often have winds from there. Minimal fallout that way too. If leaving the city was not an option, I'd just hit up my basement. It's below ground enough that I think I'd be fairly safe. I'd gather my dogs and cats and go up to our bedroom and cuddle my husband. Give the doggies and kitties some treats on the bed and hope they don't jump off, so that my last moments are a cuddle fest. Drive away from the blast. It should take less than 30 minutes to get out of the blast area. Not where I'm from. You get to the next set of bastard traffic lights. How far am I from the epicenter? Is it a city? How large of a city is it? If it just happens to be where I currently am, then I'd drive north. I live in a rural area, so not the traffic you'd find in and around a city, and at this time of year the wind mostly comes from the north-northwest, so I'd be driving away from the fallout. I'd just drive as far and as fast as I could. Reach over into my nightstand junk drawer and pull out my old Nokia 3310 to shield myself from the blast. I'd grab a 6-pack, grab a chair and sit outside calling my family and friends while waiting for the end. I'm not suicidal, but any world that would exist after my city gets bombed would be unrecognizable and probably not worth surviving for. A pillow fort. I'm safe in there. Down the street, into the woods, up the path, over the creek, up the hill, and into Vault 111. I'd drive like crazy for 30 minutes. If I drive at 100 km/h, I would be 50 km from the center of the explosion. A good distance. I would not hide. I will stay outside. I know where the nuke is going to be, so I go closer. I rather not have the most depressing years of my life. I can't do anything. So I rather just die than live the worst moments of my entire life. Switzerland. They have the 110% capacity of their population in bunkers, so there's room for me. The amount of people wanting to go towards the blast is absolutely spot on for how many of us just want to end it because of this year. I'm fine. No one is nuking rural Indiana. I'd be overwhelmed. Way too much choice. Source: I'm Swiss. Probably go outside with my boombox blasting Mr. Blue Sky while dancing.